Hello again. It's Doctora Salerno, Doctora Latina, and as people say in English, Draw Latina. And I'm back. I cut off my first episode really because I didn't know how to edit and splice. So I'm hoping that this time my daughter will edit and splice this episode, and we will continue sort of with part one, which was I'm going to wrap up a summary of some of the complexities of the Summer Wells case, and then I'm going to move on to compare some of the risk factors that the Wells family has experienced in comparison to Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard. And as some of you may or may not know, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are currently in court in Virginia, where he's suing her civilly for defamation because of an op-ed piece that she wrote. And that's all I'll say for that for now. Now, I wanted to review the fact that often in the field of medicine, psychiatry, psychology, and also in criminal analysis of personalities, we use a paradigm of the 3 or 4 types of lives that people live. And actually, that concept comes from one of my very most favorite Colombian writers, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, also known as Gabo, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the early to mid 1900s, 20th century. Phenomenal writer, philosopher, somebody who is really a sort of a touchstone for me. And he talked about the 3 or 4 lives that each of us lives. And I'm going to ask you to think about, what are your 3 or 4 lives that you live on a day-to-day basis? In English, the 3 lives have been talked about, especially on the true crime paradigm, as our public life, our private life, and our secret life. And I'll give some examples of that. Garcia Marquez, who really developed this paradigm back in the early 1900s, talked about 4 lives: our public life, our private life, our secret life, and something known as our clandestine life. Now, clandestine usually has a connotation of being not just secret, but illicit / illegal. It could also be something that maybe is not illegal, but maybe is deviant. So in Gabo's terminology, he called these lives la vida pública, la vida privada, la vida secreta, y finalmente la vida clandestina. So I'm just going to give you a few examples. And I really like this paradigm, especially that the added clandestine, I think, fills out the whole personalities of who we are as human beings. So our public life might be, for example, what I'm doing with you right now. This is my public life, where I'm presenting myself to the world with my thoughts, my ideas, fairly openly, and what the public would know as Doctora Salerno, Doctora Latina, Draw Latina. Public life. My private life would be something like what it is that I do in my home with my children, things that happen on a day-to-day basis in my family that maybe the public has no knowledge of. Now, the secret life, according to Garcia Marquez, is different from the clandestine life. And I'm going to give you a really clear difference. So the secret life would be something that perhaps just you, maybe your spouse, maybe one or two people would know your secret life. Okay. That could be something that is wonderful, or could be something that is not wonderful. Whereas the clandestine life generally is something that is more nefarious, something that's more deviant, often described as illegal. So a secret life in the YouTube crime community, I believe in law enforcement, they take the secret life as something that is deviant and likely or perhaps criminal. In Latin American literature and in philosophy of Marquez, we call the secret life as something that could be really special, but that you don't share with a lot of people. I'm going to give an example without permission of my mom, but I won't give any names. So an example of a secret life might be a choice that people make between themselves and maybe one other person, and it can be something wonderful. And I think about my mom as she has this wonderful gift of hospitality and generosity. So, for example, on more than one occasion, she has secretly sponsored somebody's financial or family crisis. Sponsored financially, for example, has helped friends that have very little means get back to South America, and she's paid their entire way without asking for anything in return and without actually telling anybody, but checking it through with me since I help her make big decisions, and obviously the person or the couple that has been in need. So that would be an example of a secret life. It's something that doesn't have to be bad. It can be wonderful. And then finally, the clandestine life, in Marquez's view, is something that is more illegal, deviant. So, for example, crimes that people commit or behaviors that are considered deviant would be in the clandestine life. So let's go back and let's figure out. We all have a public life, a private life, a secret life, and some of us have clandestine lives. And my question to you all today is to not share with the whole YouTube community, but think into your own world and your own self. What are your public, private, secret, and perhaps clandestine lives? And the challenge is to sort of break open that, in my opinion, misconception of the secret life and reformulate it into something that can be lovely. It doesn't have to be something nefarious. Now, I wanted to move on to talk about the whole concept of the Summer Wells case and the fact that, as we spoke in my first episode, that it's very multi-layered, having to do with not sort of what I call the biopsycho social spiritual model of medicine, where you have things biologically like proclivity towards addiction, alcoholism, that can have a biological basis, psychological issues around childhood traumas that affect the behaviors of all people as they move forward in their life. So biopsycho social would be things like in Northeast Tennessee, the profound economic depression, unemployment, poor public education, barriers to medical and dental health, to name a few. And spiritually, all of us have some sort of a spiritual life, inner life, faith life beyond ourselves, it could be agnosticism, atheism, or it could be theism or belief in God. That is the spiritual life, and often it's overlooked in this day and age. So, looking at this model of the biopsychosocial spiritual model paradigm, Summer Wells had and has a lot of risk factors, and we talked about that last time. Now, in addition, I spoke of other factors that have sort of made complex the case of Summer Wells, and that is her social neighborhood, the insertion of neighbors into the case, the insertion of strangers into the case, and then, of course, we've got social media, which is vilified at times by outsiders, by law enforcement. And it can be a bad thing, social media, but it also can be salvific or a saving grace. And I would give the example of the Gabby Petito case, when a sort of vagabond family couple that was traveling with their children, because of their GoPro camera, was able to go back during their journey and revisit the park where they had recalled seeing a van like Gabby Petito's. And indeed, they were able to lead law enforcement to the very spot where that van had been, and about 100 yards away from that spot was found, sadly, the remains of Gabby Petito. So in that case, the social media played a phenomenal, what I call salvific portion or part in helping. In this day and age, I believe that used correctly, social media like YouTube can be beneficial. It doesn't have to be a nuisance. It doesn't have to cloud investigation. And it's what I deem a sort of crowdsourcing investigation. In other words, many different people from all over the world who possess multiple and varied skills can come together in a community on social media to try to think about, chew on, digest, ponder what factors play into a certain crime. I think this can be amazing, and I believe it's something that can be profoundly life-giving to not only a case that may be looked at in the moment, but I believe it can also be life-giving to us as sort of virtual friends, virtual community, because we can learn so much from one another, like I learned from so many of the different creators and the different subscribers, followers on YouTube. So, as I like to say, adelante con valentía. Let's go forward with courage. And let's talk very briefly about how the Summer Wells case and the variety of risk factors are similar and different from the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard case. And I will just briefly touch on a couple of commonalities and a couple of differences, and then I'm going to leave you with a few questions. And then stay tuned for a deeper dive into the two cases and their comparisons. Both the Summer Wells case and the what I'll call the Johnny Depp case, are similar in that they deal with chronic, multi-generational polysubstance use and abuse, as well as multi-generational history of physical domestic violence, one towards another. What they are different in, obviously, is the socioeconomic perspective and reality of folks like Summerwell's family vis-a-vis Johnny Depp and high-income actors and actresses. Interestingly, if you look a little bit deeper into the life of Johnny Depp, he did not come from means. He moved many different times as a child because of the instability of his home life. He reports that he was not only emotionally but physically abused by his mother, that he and his sister would run to hide under the bed or in a closet in order to stay away from her wrath, and that this childhood trauma, in his opinion, Johnny Depp's, played into the early dabbling into both prescription and illicit drugs. Indeed, in the current court case, Johnny Depp reveals very openly and frankly that starting at about the age of 11 or 12, he dabbled in prescription anti-anxiety medications of his mother in order to numb himself from the effects of the turmoil in the home and the abuse that he was enduring. And those numbing behaviors, according to Depp, continued throughout his now almost 59 years of life. Similarly, we know that in the case of Summer Wells, there are multi-generational issues around polysubstance abuse, SA, etc., that don't just start in the generation of Summer Wells, but stem back several generations on both sides of her family. And so we know that childhood traumas, poverty, instability in the home can profoundly affect the developmental milestones of every person and can have consequences on how they cope going forward. I do want to say that just because somebody has an addiction, whether it be alcohol, cigarettes, vaping, eating, shopping, illicit or prescription drugs, to name a few, does not make them an abuser. So it's really, really important for us when we're looking at any case to look at factors like childhood trauma that affect behavior, perhaps addictions. But it's very important for us to be aware of the fact that having an addiction to something does not lead a person to become an abuser. In fact, having been in a childhood situation, a victim of abuse can also often lead an individual to be re-victimized in relationships as an adult. I think another very important concept that I want to touch on is that it is very antiquated or old-fashioned and wrong to believe that only men are perpetrators of crime, only men are abusers, and that women are the victims only. And so we really, from my professional experience and from the reading and research that I've done through the years, believe that we all need to step back when we look at these cases and open our minds up to the fact that having a certain gender, male, female, whatever, does not preclude an individual from being abused or being an abuser. In addition, having money, millions of dollars, like Johnny Depp and now Amber Heard, does not protect an individual from the consequences of the early childhood trauma that they've experienced. So for now, I'm just going to leave the comparison on a very, very superficial level for you all to think about. And the question I'm going to ask you all, for you to kind of ponder on, and if you want to say anything in the comments, would be, from the Summer Wells case over the past 9 to 10 months, what has shattered your stereotype about crime, victimization, addiction? What about the case has opened your mind and made you think, that's something I never knew before? And until my next episode, I hope that you've enjoyed the various thoughts that I've shared, and I hope that you'll kind of step back and think a little bit and share in the comments as you feel comfortable. And I look forward to seeing you all in my next episode. Adelante, con valentía, y adiós, mis amigos.